Hi children, good morning to all. How are you all? Hope all are doing good and praying to be good. I came with a new chapter in the new session. In the previous session, we discussed about the fundamental unit of life. The cell is the fundamental unit of life. Why? Because it performs all the activities, and without the cell, not any organism is formed. So, a group of cells together form tissue, a group of tissues form organ, a group of organs form organ systems, a group of organ systems form organism. So, today our chapter is a group of cells which are structurally functionally same to form a tissues. So, the complex organisms are made by many number of tissues. These tissues are mainly they are in the function of division of labor, because in complex organisms the work targets are more for each and every organ. So, a single cell cannot perform all the activities. So, group of cells which are same in function, they used to perform the activities. So, the plants have different types of tissues, as well as animals also have different types of tissues. So today in this session we are going to learn about tissues and as well as plant tissues. So how the organism form? A group of cells form together a tissue, a group of tissues form organ, a group of organs form organ system. These group of organ systems develop into an organism. So here you can see the cells are formed made by the molecules, group of molecules. These molecules are made up of atoms. Okay, so the cells are group of cells form as a tissue. You can see in a picture. A group of tissues form as organ. A group of organs form organ systems, and group of organ systems form as organism. So a group of closely associated, which are similar cells that perform related function, that means same function, and are similar in a structure are called as tissue. Xylem, phloem, they consist of different types of cells in a xylem and a phloem. And this xylem and phloem together is called as a vascular tissue, and ground tissue, dermal tissue. These are the different types of tissues which we can find in the plants. So we will discuss about the plant tissues. So coming to the plant tissues in plants that divide throughout their life. Some tissues they used to divide throughout the life of the plant, because the plants has a growth throughout the life. Okay, plant tissues can be classified as growing or meristematic tissue and a permanent tissue. So you can see the picture, meristematic tissue and a permanent tissue. The another name for the meristematic tissue is a growing tissue. So the growth of the plant occurs in a certain specific regions in the plant. So this is because they have a dividing tissues in a different specific regions. So these dividing tissues are known as meristematic tissue. So these meristematic tissues are composed of actively dividing cells and responsible for the production of many cells. So they have the capacity of division in a restricted to certain parts of the plant body. So these are called as meristems. So which are active throughout the life of the plant body. So these meristematic tissues throughout the life they used to divide. So actively they used to divide. Here you can see different types of meristems, A, B, C, D. That is ground meristem, epidermal meristem and epidermis meristem. So vascular tissues. So these all are the parts where in a plant always they have a continuous growth of a plant throughout their life. So coming to the kinds of meristems, we can see apical meristem, lateral meristem and intercalary meristem. Coming to apical meristem, it is found at the tip of the stem and the roots. So the lateral meristem is present at the cambial region. so found along the sides of the roots and the stems, and decreases the width. It increases the width of diameter of the stem and roots. So these example, vascular cambium and cork cambium, vascular cambium and cork cambium, and intercalary meristem found at the basis of young leaves and internodes. The intercalary meristem can find in the basing of the leaves and internodes. Internodes means the stem. I discussed in the class about nodes and internodes. Responsible for the further lengthening of the stem and leaves. This intercalary meristem also helps the length, increase the length of the stem and also the leaves. Now coming to the permanent tissue, tissues that attained their mature form and perform the specific functions. So they are the two types of permanent tissues, that are simple permanent tissues and complex permanent tissue. Simple permanent tissue and complex permanent tissue. Coming to the simple permanent tissue, it consists only of one kind of cells, that are dermal surface tissues, and these are external tissues from the protective covering of the plant body, which gives us a protection, that are epidermis and periderm. These are the protecting tissues in the plants. Coming to the epidermis, the outermost layer of the primary plant body covers the leaves, floral parts, fruits, seeds, stems and the roots. Seeds, stems and roots. Generally only on the layer thick with the cuticle, composed mostly of unspecialized cells, either parenchyma and or sclerenchyma. They contain trichomes, stomata, bulliforms cells in a grass. They are the special cells, okay? They contain trichomes, as they are special cells. Trichomes, stomata, bulliform cells. These bulliform cells are formed in the grass. You can see here, this is the structure of epidermis. Cuticle, upper epidermis, palisade mesophyll, bundle sheath cells, xylem, phloem, lower epidermis, sponge mesophyll, guard cells, stomata, cuticle and vein parts. Coming to the structure of stomata. Stomata pores they are used for the gaseous exchange. You can see here the stomatal pore present on or both surfaces of the leaves, either topmost or a base surface areas of the leaf. If you see, you can see the structures: epidermal cells, thickened inner walls of the guard cells, nucleus, stomata, stoma, the gap is called as a stoma, the chloroplast, guard cells. This is the surface view. And cross section, you can see stoma, guard cells, epidermal cells. So these are we'll find the stomata on the derma, epidermis of the leaves. Coming to the cuticle, they lines the outer wall of the epidermal cells, made up of wax material that protects the plants from the dissection. Trichomes are the outgrowths of the epidermal cells. The outgrowths in the epidermis are called as the trichomes. And periderm, it is a bark. Periderm, the bark. You can see here bark, periderm, outermost, and internal cork. So the bark is outermost layer of the stem and roots of woody plants such as trees. Coming to the ground tissues in the plants. First one is a parenchyma. So these are the general purpose cells of the plant cells. Cells are rounded in a shape and have a uniformly thin walls found in all parts of the plants. Living at maturity have a large vacuoles. Locations they present at the leaf, stem, pith. Stem pith means middle part of the stem, roots and fruits. Then what is the functions of parenchyma? Basic metabolic function. That means they participate in the respiration, photosynthesis, chlorenchyma in leaf. Metabolic functions means energy releasing activities, and protein synthesis. That means process of respiration and photosynthesis. Next, storage. Potatoes, fruits and seeds. This parenchyma store the food, and also wound healing and regeneration. So these three functions, basic metabolic function, storage and wound healing regeneration, the parenchyma plays a major role in all these activities. So it can be found in a living maturity, having a large vacuoles, location of leaf, stem with roots and fruits. You can see the structure of parenchyma. So the primary cell wall, cells are round in structure. You can see they have a lot of space between the cell to cell. Next one is a chlorenchyma. So in a specialized parenchyma tissue found in the green parts of the shoot and perform photosynthesis. It is a specialized tissue. Differentiate from the parenchyma cells are alive at the maturity. So they differentiate from the parenchyma. They are the parts of the parenchyma, but they consist of more content of chlorophyll to perform the photosynthesis. So they will separated or differentiated from the parenchymatic cells. Coming to the functions, they support the elasticity, stem surface along the leaf veins and seed generation. Next one is a sclerenchyma. Sclerenchyma cells which are non-living and lack protoplasm at maturity, and they have a thick lignified secondary walls. So they provide strength and support to the plants and have a seized, elongated and mature. So scleroid or a stone cells and fiber. These coconut, the fiber of coconut is there, no? That is also is an example for the sclerenchyma. The cells are very thick. They are closely packed. Next one is a vascular tissue. These are the specialized for a long distance transport the water and dissolve the substances. So they contain transfer cells, fiber in addition to parenchyma, and they conducting the cells. Location is the veins and the leaves. The types of vascular bundles is xylem and phloem. Xylem. Growth of xylem means wood transported the water and dissolve the nutrients from the roots to all parts of the plant. So they transport the water and they transport the nutrients which are dissolved in the water. Direction of transport is upward. Always the movement of water takes place from the bottom to the top, upwards direction. So there are two types, that are primary xylem and secondary xylem. So coming to the primary xylem, they differentiate from the procambium in the apical meristem and occur throughout the primary plant body. And secondary xylem is they differentiate from the vascular cambium and is commonly called as a woody xylem. It is a woody xylem. You can see in the picture the xylem, continued secondary growth, primary xylem. Next one is the secondary xylem. The next one is primary phloem, secondary phloem, annual growth layers. So these circular rings we can call it as annual rings, which are used to calculate the age of the plant by using the annual rings. And the cells which are present in the xylem are called as xylary elements. The conducting of cells in xylem, there are two kinds of xylem elements, that are tracheids and vessel elements. Coming to the tracheids, the only water conducting cells, and these are most woody non-flowering plants, mostly in the non-flowering plants. Vessel elements occurs in several groups of the plants, including angiosperms. Angiosperms means all are flowering plants. Both are elongated, dead and maturity lignified secondary cell They consist of a secondary cell wall. Next one is a phloem. The Greek word phloios means bark. Transports dissolved organic food materials from the leaves to the different parts of the plant. Glucose and a phloem moves in all directions. So types of phloem, primary phloem and secondary phloem. The primary phloem is, it differentiates from the procambium and extends throughout the primary body of the plants. Coming to the secondary phloem, differentiate from the vascular cambium and constitute the inner layer of the bark. So it is present in the inner layer of the bark. Sieve tube elements, main conducting cells of the phloem. These are the parts. Sieve tubes are also parts of the phloem, elongated and non-nucleated. You can see in the picture. Uniformly thin-walled with the end walls of the perforated to form the sieve plates. So sieve tube elements are attached end to end to form the sieve tubes. You can see the picture clearly here. Sieve tubes, membrane, nucleus, companion cells and sieve plates. So it is a flow chart. Plant tissues. Meristematic tissue, the cells capable of division. Permanent tissue, mature cells are incapable of cell division, they doesn't cell divides. Okay, coming to the simple tissues. Permanent tissues again divided into simple tissues and complex tissues. Tissues composed by the single type of cells are parenchyma, collenchyma, sclerenchyma. So parenchyma, collenchyma together forms the chlorenchyma, and also they form arenchyma. Arenchyma is not given here, which is present in the water plants, in the roots of water plants. The tissue completely filled with the gas, air, which helps to float on the surface. So the water plants used to float on the surface of the water as they are rich in content of arenchyma. And complex tissue composed of more than one type of a cell. There is a xylem and phloem. Xylem consists of xylem vessels and tracheids. Phloem consists of sieve tubes and the companion cells. You can see the differences between the meristem and permanent tissues. So coming to the meristem, it continuously dividing the cells. Permanent tissue is do not divide continuously. Meristem cells are small and isodiametric, and permanent tissue variable in a shape and size. They are different in size. Cell wall is thin, and in permanent tissue cell wall is thick. In meristematic tissue nuclei are very large, and in permanent tissue nuclei are very small. Coming to meristematic tissue, vacuoles are absent, and in permanent tissue we can find the vacuoles. And coming to the meristematic tissue, intercellular spaces are absent. In permanent tissue, intercellular spaces are present. Intercellular means the gap between the cell to cell, we call it as intercellular space. And the metabolic activities are at high rate in a meristematic tissue, and the metabolic activities are low rate in a permanent tissue. Inorganic incursions is absent in the meristematic tissue, and inorganic incursions are low rate in the metabolic activities are high rate in a meristematic tissue. Metabolic activity is low rate in a permanent tissue. Cells are undifferentiated, and that means we cannot differentiate. Here the cells in permanent tissue can differentiate. So the meristematic tissue is very simple tissue, and the permanent tissue is a simple complex tissue. Here you have given the tissue, cell type, function and location. So vascular tissues are, they consist of, xylem is made up of vessels and tracheids, and phloem is made by the sieve cells and the companion cells. What are the functions? Xylem transport the water, phloem transport the sugars. They present in the stem, leaves and roots, both xylem and phloem. Coming to the epidermal tissues, they are parenchymatic cells. They protect the plant tissues and prevent the water loss. and they locate outer layers of the stem or root and leaves, that is the epidermis. Okay, coming to the ground tissue, parenchyma, collenchyma, sclerenchyma. So they are a mix of a bulk of a plant tissues, stems, roots and leaves. So meristematic tissue is the cell type is a parenchyma, and divided produce a new growth. Throughout the life they used to grow continuously. Tips of a shoot, tips of a roots in buds in a rings around the stem is woody plants. So we can present the meristematic tissue can find in tips of roots, tips of shoots, in buds, in a ring around and a stem in a woody plants. So these meristematic stem throughout their life they used to grow. So epidermal tissue, they provide the protection and prevent of water loss. So they have epidermis, periderm and stem and roots. Next, ground tissues are helpful the photosynthesis, food storage, regeneration, support and protection. The component of tissues are parenchyma, collenchyma and sclerenchyma. And vascular tissue system is transport the water and minerals and transport the food. Examples are the xylem tissue and phloem tissue. So here is given a differences between a xylem and phloem. So the xylem is made by dead cells and phloem cells are made by the living cells. The cell wall is thick in a xylem and thin in the phloem. The cell wall material is made by lignin in a xylem, and cellulose is a part. The phloem is made by the cellulose. So the permeability, the xylem is impermeable, that means which doesn't allow any substances in itself. Phloem is permeable, it allows the substances into itself. Next one is a cytoplasm. It has a no cytoplasm in a xylem, and the phloem consists of cytoplasm lining. So the xylem transport water and minerals, the phloem transport the food. The xylem transport the water minerals to the leaves, and the phloem transport the food to the growing plant storage organs like fruits. The direction of flow is always upward in a xylem, and the direction of flow is up and down in the phloem. Tissues also have xylem has fibers. The phloem consists of companion cells. So you can see the parts here, the xylem vessels and the phloem vessels. The water molecules are traveling only one way direction. Water, minerals, one end wall between the cells. So here the water and the food, cells have end walls with the perforations, and here we can see the two-way directions. And thick walls stiffened, and they have with the lignin, they were deposited with the lignin. So here you can see the differences between the animal tissues and plant tissues. So animal tissues, since animals are mobile, so they require more energy, hence more living tissues are required. They have more number of tissues as they are mobile, they move from one place to another. In plant tissues are stationary, so they do not require much energy, hence more living tissues are not required, very less tissues. Coming to the animal tissues, move from one place to another in a search of food, shelter, etc. Hence they need more energy and their more tissues are living. In plant tissues, in plants, most tissues provide structural strength. Most of these tissues are dead, since provide mechanical strength as easily as a living ones and need less maintenance. Plants maintenance is very less when compared with the animals. Cell growth is uniformly distributed in animal tissues. In a plants, growth is limited certain regions. For certain regions, the growth will be limited. Structural organization of organs and organ systems is more specialized and complex in the animal tissues, and structural organization of organs in a comparatively is less complex in the plant tissues. So by this we discussed all the different types of plant tissues. In coming to the next session, let us have the discussion of animal tissues. See you soon in the next session.